Hello, I'm Nick Bailey, and welcome to episode 14 of the u3a radio podcast. And as this is our first for 2022, let me wish you all a very happy new year. As the u3a is celebrating its 40th anniversary this year, we've decided to launch a brand new initiative. Up till now, the podcast has only been available on the u3a YouTube channel, but from now on, you'll also be able to access it through some recognized podcast platforms, including Apple, Spotify, and Google. And we hope to expand the podcast portfolio as time goes on. This is something a lot of you have asked for. It'll be a handier way to listen, and at the same time, we're hoping it will spread the word about the u3a movement in its 40th birthday year. Talking of which, in this month's edition, we'll hear about one of the u3a anniversary projects, the planting of 5,000 trees.
Within 25 years, it will look like a woodland. And within 150 years, hopefully, it will have developed its full ecological potential, and it may be there for many centuries after that.
We'll be celebrating another milestone with almost 500 u3as already signed up to the Beacon membership system. We learn more about the Kindertransport Day and the wealth of material that's been collected on the u3a website.
Well, when people look on there, they can see a variety of memories of the Kindertransport. They can see the accounts of people who were children themselves and involved in it.
And we hear the everyday story of a lifeboatman in Skegness.
It happens all the time. I've been in the hairdressers and then leapt out the chair and run off with hair half done and half cut. And, you know, as I said, sometimes you arrive at the lifeboat station in your pajamas, in your underpants, in evening dress. It can be all sorts, you know.
Ever since the u3a movement started in France in 1973, there are now branches all around the world. One of our reporters, Joanne Watson, has been keenly watching some of the cricket in Australia and decided to find out more about what they get up to down under. The state of Victoria, for example, has 104 u3as with over 38,000 members. The chair of the National Alliance of Australia's u3as is Victorian Glenn Wall. He explained how lockdown meant they had to reassess the needs of some of their members.
We've recognised that loneliness and isolation that's been caused through COVID lockdowns has opened up an opportunity to concentrate on building digital literacy. And we've found that there's about 63% of seniors generally in Australia that haven't got the level of digital literacy skill to be able to easily connect online. So we have concentrated, particularly in the last 12, 18 months, building how to use computers, how to use smartphones into class activities. We've been running a set of programs identifying digital mentors in each of the 104 u3as. And we've identified 300. Some of that peer-to-peer exchange of experience has flushed out interesting little stories, like someone hasn't been able to go into a restaurant because they couldn't show that they'd been vaccinated and use the phone application. You wouldn't be surprised that within hours they'd been helped by their local u3a and family, and they didn't miss out next time.
What would you say is a typical u3a? What sort of classes would you say are the most popular?
We're finding that there's been a shift. The classes that cover, I guess, family history, photography, art, languages have become of more interest. That's been paralleled pretty closely by the wellbeing type programs, Tai Chi, yoga, and line dancing. Another sport-related activity, walking football. But what's interesting is that it's attracted new members, but when you map through what else those members are doing, you'll see the name pop up in an art class or in a language class, typical learning type classes. And across all of it, it's a leaning towards technology classes.
So tell me, is there an Aussie class that you're unlikely to find on the UK list?
We've had a fairly high take-up in a program online called First Nations, very much around understanding Indigenous population. There are some sports tragics that have sports interest discussion groups. I've started to notice with u3as that have mentioned to me that they've actually made contact with their namesake in the UK, and my own, its name is Whittlesea, found a u3a in the UK with the same name, spelt slightly differently.
You don't have any shark watching groups or anything like that?
Doesn't quite spring to mind, but in Queensland and Western Australia, I believe there are some, I'll say, nautical-based nature type groups, and there's one u3a actually called Naturalist, which is in WA.
I think if you said naturalist to a UK person, they think of something slightly different.
I was choosing my words carefully, I guess.
You mentioned the Indigenous group. Do you find that those people are engaging with the u3a as much as you would wish?
It's progressing. I think it's interesting that the program started with one particular u3a having a very strong Indigenous culture program that had some Indigenous members, but wasn't targeted at the Indigenous population. And over the last 18 months, we've created what we're calling a community of interest in Indigenous culture. And those programs are shared in a hybrid and an online method of delivery between a number of u3as.
I wish you well, Glenn. As one sports tragic to another, there is obviously one sport we're not going to mention, but I hope that you and your u3as have a good 2022.
We reciprocate that, Joe, and I think always remember we all have our time at the top and the bottom with cricket, so we're happy at the moment, but that may not hold up for long.
Glenn Wall, the National Chair of Australia's u3as, ending that interview with a straight bat. It's this time of year when most people book their summer holidays, and although many may wish for the expanse of Australia, I suspect we could be in for another year of staycations. A lot of those holidays will be beach-bound, and if it wasn't for the Royal National Lifeboat Institution, there would be many more accidents. The Vice Chair of Skegness u3a, Michael Clark, was connected to the institution for almost 30 years, and Ella Watts asked him how he got involved in the first place.
It actually wasn't a conscious decision. It was, as in life generally, it was a circumstance that arose. In the 70s, I was, along with some other local lads, a lifeguard at the local outdoor pool in Skegness, which was a huge pool, which is unfortunately gone now. It was a massive pool, and we all worked there as local lads, but most of those were 17, 18 years old, and I was a married man of 28, so I was the old guy that worked there. And one of the young men, a guy called Paul Streletsky, who had a Polish father, very much a local family. He was chief electrician for the council, his father. Anyway, Paul had already volunteered for the inshore lifeboat. And in those days, things have changed very much now. In those days, they used to send a rocket up when they wanted you to attend. Nowadays, it's all bleepers and very much quicker. But in those days, it was either a rocket or they rang round with the old dial telephone. So you can imagine quite how long it took for somebody to ring round using the old dial telephones to get a crew together. So when the rocket did go up, Paul used to run round the pool and he would jump over the back wall. There was a little shed behind that used to sell model yachts. So he used to land on the roof of that, nip down and then run to the lifeboat station. Well, unfortunately, one day he jumped over the back wall and badly sprained his ankle. And at the time, I foolishly said to him, well, if I can be of any use, if I can stand in for a couple of weeks while you get better, I don't mind doing that, you see. So 28 years later, I was still there.
So you'd be sitting at home minding your own business or doing whatever you normally do, and a phone would go and you'd be called to the lifeboat.
Yes, and it can be sort of any, because it's a 24/7 thing. So you could be anywhere. You could be out on a do. You could be out with your wife at dinner. You could be in bed. It didn't matter where you were. If the phone went or your bleeper went, that was it. You dropped everything and left. And the amusing thing is about it in a way that when you arrived at the boathouse, you'd run into the crew room and there would be a whole group of men in various states of undress. It happens all the time. I've been in the hairdressers and then leapt out the chair and run off with hair half done and half cut. And, as I said, sometimes you arrive at the lifeboat station in your pajamas, in your underpants, in evening dress. It can be all sorts, So it's a case of nothing gets in the way of arriving at the lifeboat station.
So talk me through what happened next. You've got all your protective clothing on, or such as you had.
Yes, well, and then it's one or two would get onto the boat. Most of us in those days would walk down. If it was daytime, of course, and particularly if it was in the summer, we would have to walk down in a line each side of the tractor and boat to fend off the holidaymakers who always wanted to get a close look-see. So it was our job to make sure that they didn't get underneath the lifeboat tracks or get in the way, because obviously their curiosity was sometimes not too safe, really. So we had to make sure that, we kept the people away while we got down to the water's edge and got the boat into the water. Just before we go into the water, there'd be a ladder put up the side of the boat. We would all climb on board. And then there are 4 chains that hold the boat to the trailer, 4 big chains. And 4 of you were then delegated to have a small mallet each. And when the coxswain blew the whistle, when the boat was on the trailer but in the water, you then had to hit the chock, release the chains, and the trailer tipped up and the boat launched off the trailer into the water. And then you were off.
So what sort of rescues did you experience?
Well, there's all sorts. One of the more amusing ones was over the Wash one day, which is our area of water. It's called the Wash off the Lincolnshire coast. And it's a notorious piece of water for sandbanks. Anyway, Richard Branson's airship came down in the Wash and we were sent out to rescue it. The guy that was in it, we got on board the boat, and then we put tow ropes on this, what was left of this airship, to tow it back X amount of miles. Well, unfortunately, as we were towing it back, the thing took off and it was up in the air, tied to the lifeboat, which wasn't very safe, obviously. So we were told to fire rockets at this airship to puncture it, to bring it down again, which is what we did. And it was amazing. Some of these rockets pierced the airship and then were zooming around inside the airship like rockets going off in a big firework display. So that was quite sensational. So by the time we towed it back to the beach, there was little or nothing left of this airship at all.
Was that within view of the holidaymakers on the beach?
No, all out of view.
I know you are a Skegness man, born and bred. You must have seen your share of holidaymakers doing things in the water.
Well, and even now, that hasn't changed a lot. People really haven't learned the lesson. They're quite prepared to put their children into inflatables and push them out on the water with never a thought to the fact that if the wind's blowing out to sea, these inflatables can travel very, very quickly indeed. And within 3 or 4 minutes, they can be hundreds of yards out to sea, far out of reach of the parents, not very good swimmers anyway. They're one of the more common rescues. And of course, we got into trouble a few seasons because when we rescued these kids in their inflatables and we took them back to the shore, handed the kids back to the parents, and we put a knife through the inflatables so they couldn't be used again. And some of the parents were absolutely furious about the damage to their inflatables. They didn't seem to bother about the fact they got the kids back. They were more bothered about the damaged inflatable.
Michael Clark with some sound beach advice. And if you've got a story to tell, maybe, like Michael, a lifetime of service for a good cause, or an unusual career, or you've started a new group, we want to hear about it. Let us know via communications@u3a.org.uk. Following the success of our poetry competition last year, we've now decided to launch another one. The National Poetry Competition opened earlier this month on the 6th of January. As previously, we're looking for a maximum of 16 lines with a rhyming component. The theme this year is new. All entries should be submitted using the online form on the Trust website at u3a.org.uk under Learning National Initiatives. Poems must be received by the deadline of the 25th of February this year, and all poems will be judged anonymously, and the top 3 will feature in Third Age Matters. Last month, on the 2nd of December, the National u3a celebrated International Kindertransport Day with a special event organised by Trust volunteer Carol Chapman. Sarah Goodall asked Carol to remind us of the background to this historic event.
The Kindertransport initiative was a drive to get unaccompanied children, mainly Jewish, out of Nazi Germany and Czechoslovakia, Poland, and basically to get them to safety in Britain. And it resulted in the saving of 10,000 children.
And I understand quite a few of those are still living.
Absolutely. And if ever you ask u3a members about something like this, you will find that there is a wealth of knowledge which you can tap into. For still some surviving Kindertransport people, their children, people who took the refugees in, a whole collection of memories we were actually able to uncover.
What will people be able to see? I understand that there is an archive that's being collected on the u3a website. What will people be able to see there?
Well, when people look on there, they can see a variety of memories of the Kindertransport. They can see the accounts of people who were children themselves and involved in it. They can see information about their children. They can see people who took the refugee children in. There is a wealth of information there which is actually available.
Are there any pictures?
There are pictures. There are documents. There are photographs. There is an awful lot of information there. An example. On the 2nd of December, we were very lucky in the afternoon to have Dame Esther Ranson interviewing people connected with the Kindertransport. And one of them was a chap called Fred Stern, who is now in his 90s. And there is information available on Fred and the life which he built for himself and his experiences as part of the Kindertransport and what happened to him when he actually arrived in this country. So that would be an example. And there are many others, and they're very, very interesting.
I understand there has been already a lot of interest and a lot of interaction with the website.
Yes. If you put anything like that on the website, I think what you expect to get, and indeed what you do get, is people saying, I know something about that. So I will contact, and there is a contact available there. I will contact them and I will actually do my story as well. That it is a testimony to the wealth of experience and knowledge that u3a members have.
Carol, just a last question, if I may. Why do you think this sort of exhibition, this sort of event, this sort of memory gathering is important?
Well, I think it is a testimony to the people who took part in it. And in many cases, not only they, but their children, and in some cases, their children's children will be affected by it. That is a very common experience of something like this. It goes down the generations. So it's important it's understood and remembered. The other thing is that it's very important, I think, that such things are remembered and understood by future generations.
Carol Chapman. And if you'd like to read the Kindertransport stories, you can go to the learning page on our website at u3a.org.uk. And to watch Esther Ranson interviewing Fred Stern, visit the u3a YouTube channel. Now, I'm sure you're all aware that trees are good for us and the environment, but perhaps you'd be surprised to learn that Britain has the lowest percentage of forest in Europe, with only around 13%. This is something that's not just happened in recent times, but deforestation has been going on in this country for several thousand years. One of the u3a 40th anniversary projects is to help improve the situation by planting 5,000 trees. Joanne Watson has been talking to the man in charge of the scheme, Rob Penn.
So what we are doing is raising funds to create a u3a 40th anniversary woodland. And we've got a site for that, which is in Southeast Wales, in the uplands, planting on marginal agricultural land. So it's really, really good site to be repurposed to Woodland Creation. And we're going to plant British native broadleaf trees using local seed provenance and create this fantastic wood, which will be a legacy for u3a for conceivably hundreds of years. Trees grow slowly, they're broadleaf trees, but within 25 years, it will look like a woodland. And within 150 years, hopefully, it will have developed its full ecological potential, and it may be there for many centuries after that.
Forgive my ignorance, but what do you term as native broadleaf trees?
So for us, round here, we'll be planting alder, downy birch, silver birch, wild cherry, crabapple, dog rose, hawthorn, hazel, peduncular oak, sessile oak, rowan, and possibly one or two other species, but those are the kind of key species that like growing here.
Now, as I understand it, some u3as have really gone to town on this and bought, I think one's actually bought 100 trees, which is amazing. And they can actually then dedicate what they buy for a specific purpose.
Yes, exactly, which I think is a way of associating yourself with the projects more profoundly, which is lovely. If a local u3a organisation buys 100 trees, that is effectively a kind of dedicated copse, and we will mark with a sign recording the donation.
But you can actually just buy one tree. If there's a specific reason why a u3a group wants to celebrate, they could actually just buy one tree.
They can indeed. And that tree will go into woodland. We're great believers that every single tree counts as far as we're concerned.
The issue of climate change is very uppermost in most people's minds these days. So tell me actually what a tree does in terms of improving that.
The process of photosynthesis allows a tree to extract carbon dioxide from the air, which it then uses in the process of releases oxygen back into the air. So lots of people call the Amazon rainforest one of the great lungs of the planet. And in that sense, it really is. And that carbon dioxide, which the tree sucks out of the air through its leaves, it stores in its roots underground, in the soil, and of course, in the biomass of the tree itself, so in its trunk and branches. It's now widely understood that tree planting and the carbon sequestration that follows from that is a key way that we can use to fight climate change, certainly in the next few decades, until we get to a point where technology allows us to sequester carbon in other ways. So it's incredibly important. But I should also add that right now we're facing the dual crisis of climate change and a biodiversity crisis. So there is a nature crash going on globally right now. It is widely recognized that developed woodlands that have reached their ecological potential provide the greatest habitat to the greatest number of species. But there are other benefits to planting trees. So around here, rainfall patterns are changing, that much we already know. So flooding is now a major issue in lots and lots of parts of Britain. Natural flood management can be carried out by planting more trees high up the hillsides. And we think that's incredibly important. So natural flood management, carbon sequestration, enhancing biodiversity, those are three key reasons to plant a tree. There are yet more. Improving soil and air quality, for example, on farmlands, creating shelter belts. There are really many, many good reasons to planting a tree. And in fact, there's hardly a downside.
I live in a town, so I suppose we should really take good care of the trees that we already have here and not chop them down at random.
My focus is on planting trees in the countryside, but actually one of the great changes that has taken place in the last 5 years with respect to tree planting in the United Kingdom is that there's been an increased focus on urban trees and the value that they give to urban communities. Generally speaking, they are very, very good for us. They're calming, green space, shade. All of these things are incredibly important in a warming climate. And of course, walking out the door and seeing lots of trees on your street, generally speaking, makes people happy.
Rob Penn. And since that initiative started 3 months ago, the target has already been exceeded, as almost 5,500 trees have now been planted. For more details on how your U3A can buy a tree, just log on, excuse the pun, to u3abrand.org.uk. Now, here's something that started as a seed in 2015 and has since grown to almost 500 branches. I'm talking about Beacon, the membership system created and run by U3A members, which will soon be celebrating the 500 U3A to use the system. Peter Clift spoke to the national support lead for Beacon, Frank Bailey.
Beacon is a homegrown membership system that has grown and been developed in order to help U3As manage their U3A, manage membership, followed by communications between group leaders, where group leaders can send emails to any one of their members without even knowing what their email address is, if necessary, because it's all held securely within Beacon.
What does Beacon offer the everyday member?
It offers them a way to renew their subscriptions online, but generally Beacon's there to help the management of the U3A rather than individual members at this stage.
Beacon's been going for a little while now. I think I'm right in saying it has about 500-ish U3As already joined up.
You're absolutely right, it has. In fact, the current number of U3As that have actually fully signed up are 496. We're looking forward to have a 500th U3A joining up to the family.
What would you say to those U3As then that haven't joined yet? How would you sell Beacon to them?
I don't think I should need to sell Beacon. I think the problem is that going back 10 years ago, maybe, everybody did everything on paper and Excel. With the advent of GDPR, what happened was that there was a concern that every laptop in the U3A had some lists of some members. And as you know, with GDPR, as it stands at the moment, that's not allowed. It happens, but it's officially against the law. But what we thought with Beacon was that this keeps all the information in one place. It keeps it all safe. It's held in the cloud. When I say the cloud, it's a field in Shropshire. It's held within the UK and it's backed up on a regular basis. So I think people came to realise that it was simpler to manage, especially for membership secretaries. Membership secretaries at the end of their year or the beginning of the year had a hell of a job pulling everything together, relating who paid, who'd not paid, passing it on to the treasurer. And he had a list of who'd paid and who'd not paid, didn't always equal the membership secretary's list. And then on top of that, gift aid. How do you sort the gift aid out? You've got to go back to everybody every year and start looking at that. But within the membership renewal system in Beacon, that's all taken care of.
I have to come clean and say, as an ex-chairman of the U3A, we did use Beacon, and I found it a tremendous benefit. One issue that does concern people, particularly about the internet and computers, is security. So how would you assure people that Beacon is quite a secure system?
The information that's put into Beacon is held securely and backed regularly. But anything that's put into Beacon is secure.
And as you said earlier, membership secretary, group secretaries always had to carry huge paper lists and also store it on their own laptops. So that was always a problem, I think, wasn't it?
It was. And that's one of the big benefits. It's all in one place. It's not in anybody's house. And it can be accessed by the people that have authority from any location. Just one device. Doesn't have to be a laptop. A lot of people access Beacon nowadays on tablets.
You have spoken about how you see Beacon develop, but I'd like to pursue that a bit more. Just your ideas on what's going to happen to Beacon and how you'd like to see it develop over the coming years.
I'd just like to put forward the fact that we are developing. We're not standing still, and we're always looking to improve the response time within Beacon. Currently, we've got 60 people that work on Beacon, and we're all volunteers. There are some very clever people working on it. There are one or two bugs, and we've got a list that we're working through. I'd like to see that every member of the u3a have their own login to Beacon / the web, and on that login, they land on a page, and on that page, they've got everything that they're interested in. So you don't have to rummage around all over the place to find things. You just look on there. I'll go to my page. It'll all be there.
A kind of one-stop shop then, really.
If possible, that's absolutely right.
Frank Bailey. And if you'd like to find out more, visit beacon.u3a.org.uk. And that's it for this edition, but we'd love to have your feedback if you're listening on one of the podcast platforms that we're now using. Get in touch via communications@u3a.org.uk. Before I go, I'd like to thank Peter Clift, Joanne Watson, Sarah Goodall, and Ella Watts for the interviews, and also to Ella for producing the podcast. Until next time, this is Nick Bailey saying goodbye.